Average Woodsman here, back with another video. So today I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about survival knives versus bushcraft knives. What are the differences? What are the similarities? Maybe go over some of the philosophy behind both of them, and go over some of my personal knives and kind of use them as examples of. I think this discussion is kind of important because of the simple fact that bushcraft and survival are really closely related. So much so that a lot of people use the two terms basically interchangeably. So that's kind of what I wanted to go over to this, over in this video today. So let's get into it. So survival knives and bushcraft knives are two of the most popular categories of knives on the market. What are the differences? What are the commonalities that they share? Those are some of the things I'm going to go over in this video. The concept of bushcraft and survival are, really closely related, so much so, that most people use the term interchangeably. There are a few specific differences, I would say, between the two, but, those are also things that I'm going to go over right now. One thing that you need to take into consideration as I'm going through, so, knives like these two, especially this one, this Bark River, survival knives are going to be far more robust, and they're going to have a different type of grind, as I stated previously. Most survival knives are not going to use a Scandinavian grind. They're going to use something like a convex, or especially a saber grind. You see most survival knives with saber grinds. It's kind of a hard comparison to the two types of knives, without comparing, different activities that they do. In essence, bushcraft is about traveling into nature and crafting things off the landscape. You're choosing specifically to venture out into the woods, and if there's anything that you need while you're out there, you can create it, for yourself off the landscape. It's more of a hobby, particularly speaking. This means camping trips, day hikes into the forest. These are not emergency situations. So a survival knife, on the other hand, is basically going to be, you guessed it, surviving in the woods. It's about getting out as quickly as possible, not staying there to hang out and practice your skills. There's no room for comfort. It's about having a foolproof, functional tool, that is specifically designed to do a lot of things, none of them not being great at any of those things. But there is a lot of overlap. For instance, like this knife, this blade that I was just referring to. This is a knife that you can have on your hip that you could trust in a survival situation, but it works good in bushcraft. Something like this, Essie RB3. It doesn't have as long of a blade, but this is an extremely robust knife that is relatively lightweight, can do a lot, has a Scandi grind, it's full tang, has a 90-degree spine on it, a very comfortable handle. It could be used for a lot of things. So there is overlap in in some of these tools. That's why bushcraft and survival are so closely related, and the term is kind of used interchangeably sometimes. The first is going to be generally size. Bushcraft knives, not always, but most of the time, are going to be smaller, have a different blade length, a different blade shape. They're going to have they're generally going to be thinner. The actual spine of the knife is going to be thinner. These are all things that play a factor in a survival knife being bigger than a bushcraft knife for the most part. You need to remember that survival knives are designed to be like a one-tool option. So something that you can strap to you and walk off into the woods and not have other gear with you, specific gear that's going to do a specific task, for instance. While bushcraft knives are, designed to do those specific tasks, for example, carving, notching, etc., survival knives are more designed to be a jack of all trade, but a master of none. So, most guys who do a lot of hunting are going to buy specifically a skinning knife or a butchering knife to do that field dressing while they're out in the field. A survival knife can do those things, it's just not going to do it as well. It's not going to carve as well as something like this Mora. This Mora is specifically designed, by the way, this is my favorite Mora that I own. This one is high carbon steel. This knife is specifically designed to be a carving knife. So it's small, it's lightweight. The blade design and geometry is specifically for carving. So this is something that I generally use around camp for carving and things like that. I'm not going, this is not a survival knife, and it never will be a survival knife. A knife like this LT Wright boat tail, this is a Puko style design. Something like this can be used as a bushcraft knife, and it is designed for that, being a Puko style knife. A very short blade, Scandi grind, 90-degree spine. It's an 1/8 of an inch thick. 01, actually I believe this one's A2. Has a very comfortable handle, but this one is full tang, which means it's going to be more robust than something like this Mora, which is a rat tail tang knife. Like this one, the Essie Azula 2, a small, robust knife that can be used for smaller tasks. Same with this knife right here. This is the Battle Horse knife. This is the Slug, a very small knife, but robust, has a 90-degree spine, a Scandinavian grind, full tang. So something like this Battle Horse Knives Buckeye, this is kind of almost a hybrid between a survival knife and a bushcraft knife. So it's in 01 tool steel, has a Scandi grind on it, 90-degree spine, full tang, but it has a pretty robust stock. I think this one is 5/32, and it has a decent length blade, maybe around 4.5 inches or so. So you can still do batoning, you can still do other types of tasks that you would be more reluctant to do with like a rat tail tang knife or a knife with a smaller length of their blade, the cutting edge. But you can also use this doing fine carving, notching, butchering. I've butchered hogs with this, squirrel, dove, all types of different animals since I've had it. I also took this to the field survival course for Randall's Adventure and Training. This is the knife that I did for the 72-hour field survival course. You only are allowed one knife, and this is the one I chose. Now, as you guys can tell, I don't actually have any really large blades except for these two, and obviously this is a machete and this is a forest tool, so it's called the Pathfinder forest tool for a reason. It is in essence a very large knife, but it's thinner, it has a thinner stock. It has, overall, it's designed a lot for chopping and bushwhacking and things like that also. But I'm not personally, and this is just me, I'm not a large belt knife guy. I don't like a really large, bulky knife on my hip. So these knives that are, 6, 7, 8 inches, I just don't use them. I've noticed, okay, so early on, I had a lot of those knives. I had a Bark River, Bravo 1.5, a Bravo 1.25. I had all these different types of knives that were like that, an SE5, an SE6, an SE Hungalas. I had a lot of these different types of larger belt knives, but as I developed my skills, I noticed that I could do a lot more, or I could do the vast majority of those tasks, even more, hard use type tasks with smaller blades, and then carry something like a folding saw when I needed to, collect firewood or make shelter, things like that. Or I could carry something like an axe or a machete to do a lot of those tasks, and have a smaller knife for doing carving and bushcraft and camp chores, things along those lines, and then have a more robust tool, or even just something as light as a folding saw to do the things that most people would try to get one blade to do. So over time, I've kind of gotten away from larger belt knives for smaller knives, because I find them to be more useful for the things that I personally do. Something like this Pathfinder forest tool, you could do a lot with this. It seems really big and bulky, and it is large. It's not super heavy because it's only an 1/8 of an inch thick. It's made out of 1095 high carbon steel, and you can chop really well with this. You can baton really well with this. It's more than robust enough to baton with. But if you have to, you can choke up and you can do finer carving. You could get high up on the blade and do more of, skinning tasks and things like that. So something like this, in an emergency situation, you could use more of a one tool option. I tend to use this for what it was designed for, and not as a one-tool option personally. Like I said, I'm not a one-tool option guy. I have a backpack. I can carry other things on my person, so I don't have to just have one item on me or one tool on me. I think that concept, if you were around in the early 2000s when the dual survival and all these TV shows were becoming more popular, if you noticed, that was the concept kind of preached by a lot of the bushcraft and survival community at that time was bigger. You saw all the manufacturers making bigger, heavier duty, thicker knives, and I feel like we've kind of gotten away from that for the most part, and people understand that you use the tool, you pick a specific tool for a specific job, and that's what you use it for. So that's pretty much the video. I just kind of wanted to go over the survival knife versus bushcraft knife. What's the difference? What are the similarities? The concepts behind both of them. Do basically like a little discussion. Whatever your guys' thoughts on both of them are, go ahead and put them in the comments below. I also wanted to kind of show you guys some of my knives from my collection. Obviously, it's more extensive than that, but I didn't want to bring all these knives out into the woods, every knife that I own. For something like the Mora or some of these smaller knives, a lot of times I'll carry them in my pack. I'm not personally a fan of carrying a rat tail tang on my body as my main tool. I have plenty of knives that are full tang knives that I can carry on my person, so I don't have to use a rat tail tang as my main cutting tool. And if you were going to do that, more power to you. I know guys love Moras. I have Moras. If I was going to do that, I would probably carry something like a Bushcraft Black or a Mora Companion HD, something like that, and then carry something like an axe or a saw, a folding saw, something like that to do the heavier tasks. But that's pretty much the video. I appreciate your guys' views, your like, subscribe, share these videos with your friends and family. Be safe, stay dangerous, and I'll catch you on the next one.